The elevator rose in complete silence, smooth and soundless, like it was lifting her out of one life and into another. Alina stood with her back straight and her hands clasped in front of her, but her fingers would not stop trembling. She pressed her thumb against the inside of her coat pocket, feeling the thin edge of the ultrasound photo hidden there. The paper felt impossibly small for something that had already changed her entire world. When the elevator doors opened, the penthouse greeted her with its usual quiet luxury. Marble floors that reflected the soft golden light, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked down on a city that never slept. Everything here spoke of power and control and certainty. Everything except her. She took a breath and stepped inside. Alessandro Vital stood near the windows, his back to her. The city stretched out behind him like a kingdom he ruled without mercy. He was dressed in black, tailored perfectly, his presence filling the room without effort. She had seen men with guns flinch in front of him. She had seen rivals beg. Yet she had also seen this same man kiss her forehead in the dark, his voice low and careful, as if she were something fragile he was afraid to break. "Alina," he said without turning, his voice calm, familiar. "You came." She nodded even though he could not see it. Her throat felt tight, like it was closing around the words she had practiced all morning. "You said you wanted to see me." He turned then, and for a brief moment her fear softened. His expression was not hard, not yet. There was something almost gentle in his eyes, something she had clung to for months. He crossed the room in long strides, stopping just in front of her. His hand came up, brushing a loose strand of hair away from her face. "You look tired," he said quietly. The tenderness in his voice made her heart ache. This was the man she loved, not the Don, not the myth whispered in back rooms, just Alessandro. The man who had stayed up all night with her once when she could not sleep. The man who had told her she was safe with him. "I have something to tell you," she said. He studied her face, his brows drawing together slightly. "You're shaking." She forced a small smile. "I'm nervous." He exhaled, almost amused, and stepped closer. His hands rested lightly on her arms, grounding and warm. "You don't have to be nervous with me." She almost believed him. Her fingers slipped into her coat pocket, touching the ultrasound again. For a moment, dread rose in her chest, sharp and sudden. A whisper in her mind told her to leave, to turn around and walk out while she still could. But hope was louder. Hope told her this baby would change him, that it would soften the hard edges of his world. That blood, his blood, would mean something. She pulled the paper free. "This is why I came," she said, her voice barely steady. She held it out to him with both hands, as if offering something sacred. Alessandro took the ultrasound slowly. His fingers brushed hers, and the contact sent a small spark through her, familiar and painful all at once. He looked down at the image. The room seemed to hold its breath. Alina watched his face, searching for anything. Surprise, confusion, wonder. She imagined him lifting his eyes to hers, imagined the faint smile she had seen when he thought no one was watching. She imagined him pulling her into his arms, whispering that everything would be okay. The seconds stretched. The silence grew heavy, pressing against her chest. His eyes moved over the image once. Then again, his jaw tightened. The warmth drained from his expression so quickly it felt like a door slamming shut. Something dark slid into place behind his gaze, something she had seen only once before, directed at a man who never walked out of this building again. "Alina," he said slowly. Her heart began to pound. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air, fragile and exposed. He did not look up. "This baby is not mine." The cold in his voice stole her breath. She stared at him, not understanding. "What?" He finally raised his eyes to hers, and the tenderness was gone. What remained was steel, controlled, absolute. "This baby," he repeated, holding up the ultrasound between two fingers, "is not mine." Her world tilted. "Alessandro, please." He took a step back, as if distance alone could protect him from the truth in her eyes. "I cannot have children," he said flatly. "I have known that for years." The room felt suddenly enormous, the distance between them impossible to cross. Alina opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She could only watch as his fingers tightened on the paper. Slowly, deliberately, he tore the ultrasound in half. The sound was soft, paper against paper, but it echoed in her head like a gunshot. He tore it again and again. White fragments fluttered down, landing at her feet like pieces of a life she had imagined but would never have. Alina stood frozen, her hands empty, her heart shattering in silence, as the man she loved looked at her not with wonder, but with suspicion and contempt. Alina did not remember how she left the penthouse. She only remembered the feeling of the floor beneath her feet, turning unreal-like. She was walking on water that could swallow her at any moment. The elevator doors closed, and the silence inside pressed against her ears, until her heartbeat sounded too loud to exposed. Her hands were empty now. No foe. No proof. Only fragments of white paper, still burning in her memory. By the time she stepped into the night, ere her legs were shaking so badly, she had to lean against the cold stone wall of the building. She pressed both palms against her stomach, as if instinct alone could shield the tiny life growing there. Inside the penthouse, Alessandro Vital stood completely still. The torn pieces of the ultrasound lay, scattered on the marble floor like fallen feathers. For a long moment he did not move. His chest rose once slowly. Then again. Anger came easily to him. It always had. Anger was familiar. Controlled. Useful. But this was not anger. This was fear. A memory surfaced without permission. A hospital room years ago. White lights. A doctor speaking carefully, choosing words like weapons. The treatment saved your life. But there will be consequences. Infertile. That word had followed him, through prison, through blood, through power. It had become a certainty. A shield. Children were weakness. Children were leverage. And he would never have them. That was the rule he had built his empire on. And now, a woman he loved had stood in front of him holding proof that threatened to break that rule. His jaw tightened. No. Impossible. He bent down and gathered the torn pieces from the floor with precise movements. He hated disorder. Hated anything left unfinished. When the last scrap was in his hand, he crushed them together and dropped them into the fire. The paper curled and vanished. Just like the future he refused to imagine. Across the city, Alina stumbled into a narrow apartment that no one knew was hers. She locked the door and slid down against it, breathing like she had run miles. Her hands shook uncontrollably now. The shock was fading. The pain was arriving. He did not believe me. The words echoed again and again. She had imagined many reactions. Silence. Fear. Even anger. But not rejection, so complete it erased her existence. She stood slowly and went to the bathroom mirror. Her face looked pale, hollow. Older. She whispered to her reflection. He said the baby is not his. The baby responded with a small flutter inside her. A movement so soft she might have imagined it. But it grounded her. Tears came then heavy and unstoppable. She cried into her hands, careful not to make a sound, as if even the walls could betray her. By morning, the city was already moving. Cars. Voices. Life continuing without mercy. Alessandro sat at his desk long before dawn. Men entered and left, silently bringing reports, waiting for orders. He gave them without listening. His mind was elsewhere. Alina had not begged. She had not screamed. She had not threatened. She had simply frozen. That haunted him. A soldier entered quietly and leaned close. Do you want her followed? The words should have been automatic. Yes. Control the risk. Remove uncertainty. But Alessandro hesitated. For the first time in years, he hesitated. No, he said finally. Let her go. The soldier looked surprised, but nodded and left. Alessandro leaned back, closing his eyes. For a moment, he saw her face again, not angry, not manipulative, just shattered. Something inside him twisted sharply, then hardened. If the baby was not his, then it was treachery. And treachery could not be forgiven. If it was his. No. That thought was dangerous. He stood abruptly and poured himself a drink he did not need. His reflection in the glass showed a man who had survived prisons, wars, and betrayal. Yet somehow one silent woman and a torn image had shaken him more than all of it. And somewhere across the city, Alina lay awake, with her hands on her stomach, whispering a promise into the dark. I will protect you, even if he never does. The city changed its face after that night. Alina felt it immediately. Like shadows leaning closer. Like air that watched her breathe. She stopped taking the same streets. Stopped riding the subway at the same hour. She learned to listen for footsteps behind her. To read reflections in dark windows. Fear was no longer loud. It was quiet. Careful. Persistent. Her phone stayed silent. No messages. No threats. That silence frightened her more than violence ever could. She packed a bag before sunrise. Not because someone told her to, but because survival whispered first. She took only what she could carry. Clothes. Cash. Documents. And the torn pieces of the ultrasound folded inside a small envelope. Every step out of the apartment felt like betrayal. But staying felt like death. She went to a bus station where no one asked questions. Where faces passed without names. She paid in cash and did not look back. As the bus pulled away, the city shrank into gray distance. Her hand rested on her stomach. The baby shifted gently. A reminder. A reason. Across town, Alessandro Vital woke to a report he did not want. One of his men spoke quietly. She is gone. Gone where he asked. Unknown. The word hit harder than expected. Gone meant no eyes. No control. No certainty. He dismissed the room with a single gesture. Silence returned. Gone should have been relief. Gone meant the problem erased itself. But relief did not come. Instead, something sharp settled under his ribs. Something unfamiliar. He remembered her face again. Not crying. Not accusing. Just still. That haunted him more than screams ever would. Days passed. Then weeks. Alina lived under a different name. In a place where the walls were thin and the windows looked into nothing. She found work cleaning offices at night. Places filled with power she wanted no part of. Her body changed slowly. Her dresses grew looser. Her movements careful. She learned how to breathe through fear. How to smile at strangers without trusting them. How to sleep lightly. Sometimes she dreamed of the penthouse. Of marble floors. Of paper falling like snow. She woke with her heart racing. Then pressed her palm against her stomach until the baby calmed her. Inside her, something stronger than fear was growing. Back in his world, Alessandro tightened his grip on everything. Deals became bloodier. Punishments harsher. Men avoided his eyes. Power obeyed him. But sleep did not. He woke at night seeing white paper burning. Seeing her walk away without looking back. One evening, his sister stood in front of him. You look like a man who buried something alive. He did not answer. Weeks later, a message reached him through a channel he trusted. A doctor. An old name. A file reopened. Alessandro stared at the information long after the room emptied. Somewhere in the city, Alina felt a sudden tightness in her chest. As if the world had shifted without warning. She did not know it yet. But the lie that destroyed her life was beginning to crack. And when truth finally surfaced, blood would answer blood. The new city did not welcome Alina. It tolerated her. Buildings stood close together like they were guarding secrets. The streets smelled of rain and metal. No one asked where she came from. No one cared where she went. She rented a single room above a closed tailor shop. The window faced a brick wall. It felt safe. Safety was not comfort. But she had learned the difference. Each morning she woke before dawn. Not from alarm. From instinct. She listened to the building breathe. Pipes clicking. Footsteps below. Silence. Her body was changing faster now. The curve of her stomach no longer hid easily. She bought clothes one size larger. Then another. She told herself not to think too far ahead. Thinking too far ahead hurt. She found work through a woman who did not ask questions. Cleaning offices. Filing rooms. Empty spaces where powerful men left fingerprints on glass. At night, when the city quieted, she talked to her baby. Not out loud. Inside. I will not let them find us. I will not let fear raise you. The baby answered with movement. Small, firm reminders that she was not alone. Meanwhile, Alessandro, Vital, watched his empire move without him. He sat in dark rooms reading reports he barely absorbed. Numbers. Names. Territories. All of it felt meaningless. The doctor message returned to his thoughts again and again. A past he thought buried. A file reopened. He told himself it meant nothing. Old data. Old hope. Hope was dangerous. Yet he ordered another test. Then another. Not because he believed, but because doubt had found a crack. He did not tell anyone. Not his men. Not his sister. This was between him and whatever truth was hunting him. One night, he stood on his balcony, watching the city below. The same city Alina had fled. He tried to remember the exact moment her eyes changed. The moment hope died. It had not been when he spoke. It had been when he tore the paper. That realization twisted something deep. Across the city, Alina collapsed to her knees in her small room. Pain seized her lower back, sharp and sudden. Panic followed. She counted breaths. Waited. The pain eased. The baby moved again. Strong. Alive. She laughed softly through tears. I am still here. She began preparing without allowing herself to feel joy. A small bag under the bed. Baby clothes folded carefully. A name whispered only once. She avoided hospitals until she could not. When she finally went, the nurse did not ask about a father. And Alina did not offer. She learned how to disappear inside routines. Work. Sleep. Breathe. But truth does not disappear. It waits. The results reached Alessandro on a quiet afternoon. He stared at the words without understanding them. Not zero. Not impossible. Possible. His breath left him in a rush. The room tilted. If this was true, if his body had betrayed his certainty, then the child, his child, and the woman he cast into exile. Fear finally reached him. Not fear of enemies. Not fear of death. Fear of what he had already done. Far away, Alina pressed her hand to her stomach again. A sudden sense of unease rippling through her. Something was coming. She could feel it. And when it arrived, it would demand everything from both of them. Alessandro Vital stopped sleeping. Not because danger circled him, but because memory did. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Standing still. Not crying. Not screaming. Just frozen. That stillness was worse than hatred. He walked his penthouse at night like a caged animal. Bare feet on cold marble. Lights off. City glowing below like it was mocking him. He replayed the moment again and again. Her hands shaking. The way she had looked at him, like he was the last place she belonged. The way hope had lived in her eyes for only a second. Then vanished. He told himself he had done the right thing. That certainty was strength. That doubt was weakness. But the word possible would not leave him alone. It followed him into meetings. Into negotiations. Into silence. His men noticed. Power still answered him. But something was wrong. He was sharper, crueler, less patient. A man was dragged into his presence, one evening accused of disloyalty. Normally, Alessandro would have listened, measured, decided. That night, he ended it without hesitation. Blood answered blood. But when the room emptied, the satisfaction never came. Only emptiness. Across the city, Alina felt the weight of months settle into her bones. Her body was heavier now, her movement slower, but her resolve harder. She had learned how to live small, how to make herself invisible, how to disappear in plain sight. She avoided mirrors, but sometimes caught her reflection anyway. A woman changed, not broken. She whispered to her baby at night, telling stories of places that were safe, of a world without fear. She never spoke his name. Speaking it felt dangerous. One afternoon, she noticed a man watching her from across the street. He did not move, did not follow, but fear returned like a wave. That night she did not sleep. Miles away, Alessandro sat across from his sister in a quiet room. She studied him longer than he liked. "You look haunted," she said. He did not answer. "When was the last time you tested it?" she asked. "Tested what?" "Your certainty." The words struck him harder than she intended. "I was told I could not," she continued. "But medicine changes. Bodies change." He stood abruptly. Enough. But the seed had already been planted. That night, he ordered every record pulled, every file reviewed, every truth he had buried dragged back into light. He did not do it for her. He told himself that. He did it because doubt was poison. Days passed like weeks, weeks like years. The results arrived, folded inside a plain envelope. No symbols, no power, just truth. He read them once, then again. His hands trembled for the first time in decades. Not zero. Never zero. Partial recovery. Rare. But real. The room spun. The baby. His chest tightened painfully. If this was true, then she had not lied. Then he had torn his own blood apart. Across the city, Alina doubled over as pain surged through her back. She gripped the edge of the table, breathing hard. The baby moved strongly. Alive. Insistent. She whispered a name again. Just once. Alessandro sank into a chair, staring at the paper. A man who had survived prisons and war. Undone by a truth he was too afraid to face. For the first time, power meant nothing. Only consequence. And somewhere between them, truth was rising. Unstoppable. Demanding to be answered. Truth did not arrive like mercy. It arrived like a sentence. Alessandro sat alone in a room stripped of weapons and men. No guards. No advisors. Only paper in his hands and a silence that refused to soften. He read the results again. Then again. The words did not change. Partial recovery. Viable. Possible. The certainty he had built his life on collapsed without noise. No explosion. No warning. Just absence. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since prison he felt naked. Not powerful. Not feared. Just a man who had been wrong. He remembered the way Alina had frozen. The way she had not defended herself. Not because she was guilty, but because she had trusted him. That memory burned. His hand tightened slowly. Then opened. Orders formed in his mind, but this time they were not violent. They were precise. All surveillance lifted. All quiet eyes pulled back. No one touches her. No one follows her. The words were spoken softly into the dark, but they carried weight. Across the city, Alina sat in a clinic waiting room, staring at a wall that needed paint. The chair was uncomfortable. The air smelled like disinfectant. Her hands rested on her stomach. The baby kicked strong now, demanding space, demanding life. She listened to other women speak softly around her, some with partners, some alone. She was alone, and she had never felt stronger. When the nurse called her name, Alina stood slowly, carefully. Everything in her life was careful now. Back in his world, Alessandro opened a drawer he had not touched in years. Inside were relics of a man he used to be. Old documents, old weapons, old vows. He removed a ring heavy with history and set it aside. That symbol had ruled men, killed men, protected him from feeling. It meant nothing now. He called his most trusted lieutenant and spoke one sentence. "I am stepping back." The silence on the other end said everything. Power does not step back. It is taken. But Alessandro did not care. He transferred control. Temporarily, he said. But both men knew better. Then he did something no one expected. He ordered a trust created under a name no one recognized. The name of a child not yet born. The funds were untouched, untraceable, unconditional. Not for Alina. Never for her pride. For the child. He did not attach a message. Did not ask for forgiveness. He knew better. Forgiveness was not requested. It was earned. Alina returned home that evening exhausted. Her feet ached. Her back throbbed. An envelope waited at her door. No sender. No markings. Her body stiffened instantly. Fear had taught her caution. She opened it slowly. Inside were papers she did not understand at first. Then numbers. Names. Her breath caught. This was not money meant to control. This was protection. She sat down hard on the edge of the bed. He knows. The realization hit her with terrifying clarity. He knows. Tears filled her eyes, but they did not fall. Not yet. Miles away, Alessandro stood in the dark of his penthouse, looking out over a city that no longer felt like his. He pressed his hand to the glass. "I was wrong," he said quietly. The words tasted unfamiliar. Heavy. He did not know if Alina would ever forgive him. Did not know if he deserved to be forgiven. But for the first time, he was not hiding from truth. And that truth was simple. The child lived. The lie was his. And redemption would cost him everything. Somewhere in the city, Alina lay awake, listening to her baby breathe inside her. Knowing the past was no longer buried. The silence before the reckoning had ended. Alessandro Vital learned what it meant to wait. Not the kind of waiting that came with power. Not the kind where men stood ready and doors opened. This was different. This was waiting without permission. Each morning he woke before the city. Not from alarms. From wait. The penthouse felt hollow now. Too large. Too quiet. He had dismissed most of the staff. Not as punishment. As necessity. Noise distracted him. Power tempted him. And he needed neither. He began walking the city streets alone. No guards. No cars. Men whispered when they recognized him. Fear followed at a distance. But he did not care. He was not hunting. He was not hiding. He was learning restraint. Every instinct in him screamed to find Alina. To stand in front of her. To explain. He did nothing. Because explanation without consent was another kind of violence. Instead, he acted where she could not see. Doctors received instructions they did not question. If a woman arrived under a certain name, she would receive the best care. No bills. No records traced. Hospitals were guarded quietly. Not by men with guns, but by absence. No threats. No watchers. Only space. Alina felt the change before she understood it. The fear that had followed her for months began to thin. Not disappear, but loosen. She noticed it when she walked home at dusk. No footsteps echoed behind her. No familiar pressure at her spine. She noticed it at the clinic, when the receptionist smiled instead of scanning her name. Protection without presence. It unsettled her, because it felt intentional. One evening, she found a small package outside her door. Not flowers. Not money. A blanket. Soft. Hand-woven. No note. She pressed it to her face and inhaled slowly. Something inside her cracked. Across the city, Alessandro sat with a therapist for the first time in his life. The man did not flinch at his name. Did not fear his past. He listened. And listening was harder than violence. "Why did you destroy the image?" the therapist asked. "Because it proved I could lose control," Alessandro said. The words surprised him. Control over what? Hope. That truth lingered long after the session. Days passed. Then weeks. Elena grew heavier. Stronger. Closer. She talked to her baby more now. Out loud. She told stories of oceans she had never seen. Of cities without shadows. Of a father who was learning how to be human. She did not forgive him. Not yet. But hatred was fading. And that frightened her. One night labor pains began early. Sharp and sudden. Panic rose. Rachel was not there. No one was. She called for help with shaking fingers. Somewhere across the city, Alessandro felt his phone vibrate. A single message. No words. Just a location. He did not move for a long moment. This was the line. The one he could not cross without her permission. He arrived at the hospital before dawn. But he did not enter. He sat in his car with both hands gripping the wheel. Breathing slowly. Minutes passed. Then hours. A nurse approached cautiously. "Are you Alessandro Vital?" He nodded. The woman studied him, then spoke quietly. "She is asking if you want to be here." Not inside, but close. His chest tightened. "Yes," he said. "I will wait." Inside, Elena breathed through pain. Her body working. Her world narrowing. She knew he was there. She felt it. Not like fear. Like gravity. When the door finally opened, and he stepped into the room. He did not speak. He did not touch. He stood where she could see him. Eyes full. Hands empty. She nodded once. That was enough. For now. Outside, the sun rose slowly. Unaware. And in that quiet room, between pain and forgiveness, a man who once ruled by fear learned how to kneel without bending his knees. Pain erased time. Elena did not know how long she had been breathing through fire. Only that each wave pulled her farther from fear and closer to something final. The room was small. White. Too bright. Her hands gripped the sheets. Her voice broke and returned stronger. She was no longer running. The nurses moved around her with calm efficiency. Voices steady. Hands sure. Someone asked if she wanted medication. She shook her head. She wanted to feel this. Every part. Because this pain belonged to her. And to the life she had protected. Outside the room, Alessandro sat perfectly still. His back straight. His hands folded. Men feared him. Weapons obeyed him. But this door did not. Every sound from inside cut into him. Each breath she fought for. Each cry. He did not look away. This was the cost of being late. Of being wrong. Hours passed without mercy. Elena felt herself tearing open. Felt strength rise from a place deeper than fear. She screamed. Not in weakness. In defiance. The baby responded with urgency. A force of will. She pushed with everything she had left. And then the world cracked. A sound rose sharp and alive. A cry that did not ask permission. The room froze. Then moved fast. Elena collapsed back against the pillows. Sweat-soaked. Heart racing. They placed the baby against her chest. Warm. Real. Alive. Her breath caught. "Hello," she whispered. The baby curled instinctively. Small fingers gripping skin. Tears blurred her vision. But she smiled. "I did it." The door opened slowly. Alessandro stepped inside. He stopped several feet away, as if an invisible line held him. He looked smaller somehow. Not diminished. Human. His eyes went to the baby. Then to Elena. She studied him. The man who had broken her. The man who had waited. "Come closer," she said. He moved carefully, as if the floor might give way. The baby shifted. Gray eyes opened briefly. Alessandro inhaled sharply. He dropped to his knees without thinking. Not for show. Not for forgiveness. For recognition. That cry. That face. Blood answered blood. "I am here," he said quietly. Not as a claim. As a vow. Elena watched him. Measured him. This was not the man who tore paper. This was a man who had learned to stand still. She nodded once. He reached out. Paused. Waited. She adjusted the baby and offered her forward. Alessandro took the child with shaking hands, holding her like something sacred. Something that could be lost. His breath broke. "I am sorry," he whispered. Not to Elena. To the baby. For not believing. For being afraid. The baby slept. Unbothered. Forgiveness did not arrive. Not yet. But something else did. Truth without fear. The nurse smiled quietly and stepped back, leaving them alone. Elena leaned her head against the pillow. Exhausted. Complete. "We will go slowly," she said. He nodded. No argument. No demand. Slow is all I know now. Outside the window, the city moved on, unaware that a legacy had just been rewritten. Not with power. Not with blood. But with restraint. And a single cry that changed everything. Morning arrived without permission. Soft light spilled through the hospital window, touching the walls and the floor, and finally the small body sleeping beside Elena. She watched the rise and fall of the baby chest. Each breath a miracle. Each movement a reminder. Alessandro sat in the chair near the wall. He had not slept. He did not try. He watched quietly, learning the shape of something fragile. The world he ruled demanded obedience. This child demanded presence. When the nurse returned, she spoke gently, as if fear might wake the baby. "Do you want to hold her again?" Alessandro looked to Elena first. She nodded. Permission given once did not become ownership. He stood slowly, carefully, every movement deliberate. When the baby settled into his arms, something shifted in his chest. Not pride. Not possession. Responsibility. This life would remember his choices, even the ones made before she could speak. Elena broke the silence. "You hurt me." He did not flinch. "I know." "You threatened me." "I know." "You erased me." "I know." Each word landed heavy. Necessary. He did not defend himself. Did not explain. Explanation was too easy. She watched him closely, waiting for the man she feared. He did not appear. "I am not forgiving you today," she said. He nodded. "I am not asking. I will not pretend nothing happened. I would never ask that." The baby stirred. A soft sound. Alessandro adjusted his hold instinctively, learning without instruction. Elena noticed. And something loosened. Later that day, his world learned the truth. Quietly, precisely, the child was his. No announcement. No spectacle. Men received new orders. This child was untouchable. This woman was untouchable. Not because he owned them, but because they were no longer alone. Still, he did not bring guards. Did not bring gifts. He brought himself. Every day. He showed up for appointments. For feedings. For silence. He learned the rhythm of the baby cries. The language of need. He learned Alina boundaries. And honored them. At night, when the room darkened, he sat by the window holding the baby. Thinking of what had almost been lost. Power had taught him how to take. Life was teaching him how to stay. One evening, Alina spoke again. You cannot fix this with loyalty. I know. You cannot protect us with fear. I know. She studied him. Why are you still here? Because leaving is what I did before. And I was wrong. The answer was simple. Unpolished. It mattered. Forgiveness did not arrive like a sunrise. It came like dusk. Slow. Uncertain. But it came. Alina watched him place the baby gently into the crib. Step back. Wait. She reached out. Not to stop him. To touch his sleeve. He froze. Just stay, she said. He did. And that was the moment. Not when blood was proven. Not when power was surrendered. But when he stayed without being asked. And did not claim what had not yet been given. Outside, the city continued to breathe. Unaware that a man who once ruled by fear was learning how to live with consequence. And inside that quiet room, a family took its first fragile step. Forward. Time did not heal. It revealed. Days turned into weeks. Weeks learned how to breathe. Alina watched Alessandro from a distance at first. Not physical. Emotional. He never rushed. Never asked. Never reached without being invited. He arrived early. Left late. Stayed quiet. Power no longer followed him into rooms. Only patience. The baby grew. Small sounds became patterns. Patterns became needs. Alessandro learned them all. Not from instruction. From attention. He learned the cry that meant hunger. The cry that meant fear. The silence that meant sleep. He learned how to sit still for hours. How to hold without gripping. How to love without claiming. Alina noticed everything. One evening, she found the envelope again. The one she had hidden away. The trust papers. She stared at the name written there. Her child name. She did not feel controlled. She felt considered. That mattered. Alessandro felt the past pulling at him sometimes. Old instincts. Old violence. He refused them. Men tested him. Watched. Waited. He chose differently every time. Not because he was weak, but because strength had changed shape. One night, Alina stood alone in the small room while the baby slept. She opened a drawer she had not touched in months. Inside lay the torn pieces of the ultrasound. Carefully kept. Never thrown away. She sat on the floor. Reassembled them slowly. Edges uneven. Image scarred. Still whole. Alessandro watched from the door. He did not speak. When she finished, she held it up. This is what you destroyed, she said. He nodded. And this is what survived. Her voice did not shake. He stepped forward then. Not to take it. To witness. I was afraid, he said. I know. I chose fear over trust. I know. Silence settled. Not heavy. Honest. She stood and placed the image in his hands. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But truth. He accepted it with reverence. That night he did not leave. He slept on the floor beside the crib. Close enough to hear every breath. far enough to respect space. Morning came gently. Elena woke to find him still there, eyes open, watching. "You stayed," she said. "Yes." Without being asked. "Yes." She sat beside him, not touching, but near. The baby stirred, reached. Both hands moved at once, then paused. Elena smiled. "You can hold her." He did, carefully, gratefully. The final truth did not come from blood, or tests, or confession. It came from choice. A man who could have ruled chose to wait. A woman who had been broken chose to try. A child born from silence became proof. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, something steadier formed. Not a fairy tale, not peace, but something stronger. A future built from restraint, from patience, from pieces once torn apart. Elena rested her head against the wall, watching father and child. "We survived," she whispered. Alessandro nodded. "And we will choose each other. Every day."